Hello, my friends. I'm Eileen, the Mello Astrologer, and today I want to give you a little taste of what's coming in the pipeline in 2023. Okay, so 2023 is actually quite a significant year in terms of the astrology. There is a lot changing, a lot of planets changing signs, and it is the slower moving planets that are changing signs. So this is pretty significant because what that means is we will be feeling this shift of energy in a different way. It's really, whereas the personal planets, which would be Mercury, Venus, and Mars, also Jupiter, well, Jupiter's a social planet, kind of depends on your school of thought, but these planets change their sign much more frequently. And so we're feeling the energy shifting, shifting, shifting. But when an outer planet changes signs, then we feel that energy in a completely different way. So 2023 is a big year for that. Now, I'm not going to cover the entire year in this video because it's just too much and it will be overwhelming. I try to keep my videos more basic for the layperson who maybe doesn't have so much astrological know-how or jargon in their toolbox, okay? I want this to be accessible to the average person. If you have any questions, definitely drop them below. I love answering your questions and seeing what's on people's minds, okay? So let's just start out with the new year. We had both a Mercury retrograde and a Mars retrograde at the new year, which I think particularly that Mars retrograde, which happens only once every 2.5 years, is pretty symbolic because it's kind of given us the flavor for the year, right? Now, keep in mind, this is the calendar year, and I'm an evolutionary astrologer. So the beginning of the astrological year is actually the spring equinox when the sun moves into the sign of Aries, and that happens on March 20th. So I'm looking at, okay, what is the calendar new year and the astrological new year energies? But right now we're talking about the calendar new year because that's what the masses are following, not the astrological new year. So if we look at this retrograde energy, two retrogrades, the Mercury and the Mars. Mercury's not such a big deal. We have several Mercury retrogrades a year. We're pretty comfortable and familiar with Mercury's retrograde, even if you're not consciously familiar with it, right? It's something that is happening multiple times throughout the year. And so whether or not we're attuned to it, we definitely know that we definitely at a deeper level are aware of this energy. Now, the Mars retrograde happens only once every 2.5 years. And Mars going retrograde is pretty different than the Mercury retrograde. Mercury is more about communications, our thoughts and perceptions, our local communities and traveling, small electronics, this kind of thing. Mars is our vital life force energy. So when Mars goes retrograde, that's a pretty big deal because we tend to lose our momentum, like across the board. Loss of energy, loss of sex drive, loss of momentum, loss of a lot of things. Okay, now everybody experiences this differently. So if you're like, Eileen, my sex drive has totally gone up. Okay, fine. This is where astrology is nuanced. Everybody's being affected differently. I'm talking in general terms here, okay? So what I think is most significant about the Mars retrograde is that it just can bring a feeling of tiredness and stagnation because Mars wants to take action. It wants to initiate, and it always wants to be doing, going. It does not feel good sitting still. When Mars is retrograde, it's as though the symbolic qualities of Mars's archetypes, this is true for any retrograde. The archetypes of the planet seem to be moving askew. It's like what we normally expect from that planet, we're not feeling. So Mars being our vital energy, moving backward, our vital energy moving backward. It's like we don't have any vital energy, right? So a lot of people I've observed or heard from say that they're tired, that nothing's working. I know of one coach who launched a program that she's launched quite a few times and usually fills up really quickly with students. This time it took forever to fill up. I don't know if she ever even reached her goal, but it was like, what's going on here? Normally this program fills up really quick and I'm having to like really put forth effort into filling all of these spots. That's a classic Mars retrograde. Mars is also in Gemini right now. And so it can feel almost like a Mercury retrograde because Gemini is one of Mercury's two signs. Virgo's the other one. So the communications can be wonky. Also, I've noticed travel and driving, road work, these kinds of things under the Mars retrograde have not been fantastic. People can feel very overstimulated because Gemini is the mind. There can be too much talking. There can be a lot of arguing. Mars and Gemini is a classic war of the words signature, meaning somebody who like can be very eloquent, say like a great litigator or attorney, for example. But when it's retrograde, it can also have a bite, you know, I mean, it can have a bite or a sting even when it's not retrograde if you have this natally Mars and Gemini. But when it's retrograde, it tends to not, it tends to be more of a hothead than Mars already is. Okay, so we started the year with the Mars retrograde. Mars is retrograde through January 12th. And it's been retrograde for 2.5 months. It started on October 30, I believe. And then the Mercury is retrograde until January 18th in the sign of Capricorn. So dealing with signs, subjects around taking responsibility, our finances. Capricorn is very prudent and practical and hardworking. And so it might be that we're reconsidering our goals right now. And it is the new year, which is when we tend to do that kind of thing, right? So setting an intention for yourself with the Mercury in retrograde around what do you want to accomplish for 2023? And I'm not talking about some silly resolution, not that resolutions are silly, but we all know that there is a mass tendency, because we're humans, to set a resolution that we don't stick to. I'm not talking about that kind of intention. I'm talking about an intention about something that you know that you're going to work toward, because Capricorn is the sign of achievement and success. It's not going to stop. So if there is something that you really want to see come to fruition or actualization in your life this year, set an intention around that. And I have a friend who said, this is an excellent example. He said that he would like to be in better alignment with his words and actions, that he notices sometimes that he says things and he doesn't follow through the way he would like. So this is a good example. It's not like I want to go lose 10 pounds. Okay, this is something where it's like, I want to be in better integrity, a good Capricorn word, around my words and actions. So that is something that is not going to happen overnight. Right? That's personal development, which is another perfect Capricorn. Capricorn's very self-reflective. So thinking about, okay, well, what are the thoughts and deficiency stories that are kind of running me that create this imbalance between my thoughts and actions? And then how do I come into better alignment? That's a long-term goal that Capricorn is going to be very able to assist you in. So just an example of a type of intention you can set. Now, this retrograde energy, I believe, is going to persist throughout the year because it is what launched our new year, Mars retrograde and Mercury retrograde. I'm not saying that your vital life force energy is going to be difficult for the entire year, but I think we are going to have that signature of like, okay, things are changing. And when things change, we have to evaluate and reevaluate. What is changing? Okay, it can be exciting, but that doesn't mean you just go full steam ahead into the new change. It's like you have to get a lay of the land, right? And that can feel like you're not making the progress that you would like. Or it could be that we launch a new cycle of energy and you start off running really fast. And then you realize like, okay, my stamina is waning a little bit. I'm not actually clear about what's going on here, right? Keep in mind that this Mars retrograde has created a lot of, I'm noticing, purging. And if I'm honest, I'm not really sure why that is, if it's the Mars retrograde or if there's something else that I'm not identifying. But my observation from what I'm hearing from other people and what I'm experiencing in my own life and with my clients is that folks are purging, they're reorganizing, they're clearing out, and they are getting rid of things that no longer serve them, which is definitely not a Mars or a Gemini archetype per se, but Gemini being the mind and like wanting to do away with, what I can see is that clearing space in our physical environment, clear space in our mental, emotional realm as well, right? Our emotional bodies and our auric fields. And because 2023, there's going to be a shift, this could be part of it. But this lack of energy, if you find that like the projects that you were working on aren't moving as quickly as you would like, maybe consider where in your physical environment you can do some cleansing and reorganizing. File cabinets needing to be gone through, especially with the new year, closets that need to be kind of torn apart, things like this, right? Like the point here is, where is energy stagnant in your life? And what can you do about it to usher in new energy in 2023? So getting rid of the old so that you can bring in the new energy that you want, including that Mars energy of having, you know, the last few years have sucked, right? I keep calling it the 2020 trilogy. Like it just keeps going and going and going. And hopefully 2023 is going to usher in new energy. So how do you want to play with the new energy? Do you want it to come into a house that's full of, you know, this accumulated stagnant energy from the last few years? Or do you want it to come in and have room to breathe and help you grow and change? Okay, so that's what I'm talking about with the retrograde energy here and how you can work with the retrograde energy. Okay, what I want to do is move on to March, because March is the kickoff for these shifting energies. We still have a few more months until we really start to feel different. Now, the Mars retrograde will end, then the Mercury retrograde ends 6 days later, right here in mid-January. So coming up fast. And we're going to start to feel better. Okay, I'm going back to work. My gas tank is filled up. Let's see if the car can start moving at normal speed again, right? I've been just kind of stagnant and sitting here. And so we don't, even though we might have the energy to get up and move, and we may do that in various ways, overall, our entire like energetic body is probably, it depends on your disposition, of course. This is where the nuance comes in with astrology. But for some of us, it may be that it takes us a while to get up and going, all right? And consider that Mars's shadow period, if you don't know what a shadow period is, it's okay. This is one of these more technical terms, it's jargon. But Mars's shadow period is through most of March, I think March 23rd, late March. So after the astrological new year. So we're still going to be under the shadow of Mars's retrograde, which I think is interesting that the shadow is through March, because we have the astrological new year beginning on March 20th. And most significantly, we have Saturn moving into the sign of Pisces on March 7th. Okay, so just 2 weeks before the astrological new year and before Mars ends his retrograde period. Now let's talk about what that means. Saturn is in a sign for 2 to 2.5 years. That's Saturn's orbit. So Saturn has been in the sign of Aquarius for 2.5 years. That's a long time. Okay, and that means Saturn is traveling through a specific sector of your horoscope, a specific house of your horoscope for 2+ years. Okay, so when he changes signs, he may or may not be moving into a new house of your horoscope. It depends on your horoscope. But he will be soon enough if he isn't already. Okay, and the sign that he's traveling through, that makes a difference anyway. So it doesn't really, I mean, it matters in what house he is in your horoscope, but that's irrelevant for the point that I'm making here, because Saturn is ushering in a new cycle of energy. So let's talk about Saturn. Saturn is the planet that rules the sign of Capricorn. So it's earthy energy. Again, I was talking about Capricorn in terms of the Mercury retrograde. Saturn is very much about form and structure, the material world, business-oriented, money-oriented, and Saturn helps us see our limitations in the material realm. So I was talking to my best friend Robin about this. If you've watched my videos, then you've seen Oracle Goddess Robin Finney in my videos. She's also my best friend, and we talk about this stuff on a regular basis. And I was saying that Saturn reminds us that there are certain limitations within our reality, right? Like, I'm not going to go outside and fly home. I'm going to go outside and get into my car and drive home. So that is a limitation of our three-dimensional reality, right? I cannot fly in this reality. And Saturn reminds us of where we are limited in a physical way. Okay, I'm not talking about a limitation that maybe is created because of a trauma or an insecurity, that's different. That's Scorpio's realm, and we're not going to talk about that. But so when Saturn is in Aquarius, like he is now, this is one of Saturn's the ancient ruler of Aquarius and Capricorn. He's not the modern ruler of Aquarius. The modern ruler of Aquarius is Uranus. Okay, but all the same, Saturn is exalted in the sign of Aquarius, and this is because Aquarius is very much about social progress and invention, movement forward of the masses. It's a very detached air mental sign. Saturn likes to be here because Saturn is very judicious and has a lot of integrity. And when Saturn is in its integrity, it has a lot of integrity, it has a lot of respect, it takes responsibility, it is a leader, it's the parent of the zodiac, one of the parents of the zodiac. When Saturn moves into Pisces, it's a water sign. So think about what happens when earth and water meet. We get mud, right? We get landslides. Earth does not like to come into too much contact with water. Okay, so Pisces is the sign of transcendence at its like highest expression, service to others. And Pisces really is a compassionate, emotional, because it's a water sign. And Pisces, what we're going to see here is that Saturn, the sign of practicality, meets the sign of impracticality. If there is a sign that is the most impractical, and I'm not talking about weird the way Aquarius is. Aquarius can be impractical because it's trying to do something that's unconventional. Pisces is just impractical on its own because it's often la la land. It's often its own little idealistic fantasy land where it doesn't actually believe that our three-dimensional reality is limited. It would say, Saturn, that's your perceived limitation, not an actual limitation. Okay, so these are very different energies, and we could have a lot of progress being made around how we care for the masses. So in terms of like global expression, there could be some confusion because the sign of the material realm and form meets the sign that dissolves things. So we could find that there are societal structures that are dissolving, and that can create some confusion or nebulousness around like, well, what is the new structure that's going to be created? We could also find that there is a lot of compassion for like globalization in general, like as we become a more global society, that we are creating laws and rules, Saturn, that is more compassionate, that is based on like what does everyone need versus what do we need, like what do Americans need, but also what do they need in Uganda, what do they need in Venezuela, right? So we're a global society now. And so Saturn might be able to bring some reorientation to how we interact as a global society, okay? In a compassionate and loving way, because that's the Piscean energy. It's in service to others, and it's a very compassionate nature. Okay, I know this is a lot. Now, how that can play out in our personal lives is that we are experiencing how to put rules and structure to areas of our life where we previously didn't pay too much attention, Pisces. And in the way that, I don't mean that we didn't pay attention. What I mean is that there wasn't a concrete element to this area of our lives. And so Saturn comes in and is like, okay, you're kind of idealistic about these things, and maybe you need to take better responsibility, or maybe you need better structure in this area of your life. What I also think could happen is that because Saturn is like the parent of the zodiac and Pisces is so loving and sensitive, it could be that whatever sector of your horoscope, whichever house of your horoscope Saturn is transiting through, that it brings a more loving parent to that area of your life. It's like, because Saturn, I also call Saturn the drill sergeant. He wants you to be your best self. And there's no allowing you to shirk your responsibilities, be it any kind of responsibility in the workplace, at home, to yourself. Okay, so Saturn can be very difficult energy to work with because he's always holding you accountable. It's like if you try to get out of anything, there Saturn is. No, you can't get away with that. So in Pisces, let's see, there might be some more compassion being brought to oneself in terms of our self-reflective exercises or our spiritual path. Okay, there might be like, oh, more inner child work being done. Okay, see my point here? All right, so the other thing that happens in March that is really important is that Pluto moves into the sign of Pisces. I'm sorry, Aquarius. Pluto moves into the sign of Aquarius. Before I move on about Pluto and Aquarius, I just want to say that in the comments below of this video, I have linked to my freebie Electrifying Astrology, which is an outline of the biggest dates of the year, astrological dates, obviously. Okay, so you don't have to remember all of these dates. I have this beautiful PDF guide that you can download for free and use to track these dates. And it also, this guide links to a digital calendar that I created. So you can add these dates directly to your own, your iCalendar or your Google Calendar so that you can track these dates and remember. You don't have to go like, oh goodness, when is the next Mercury retrograde? You can look, you can see it, it's coming. You can set reminders for yourself, okay? And I also talk about all of this stuff in my weekly digest, Astrological. And you can sign up for that on my website, or if you download Electrifying Astrology, then you will be automatically signed up for my weekly digest. And I do a forecast and all kinds of good stuff in that, so you'll love it. Okay, so going back to Pluto and Aquarius. Pluto has an erratic orbit, which means that he does not stay in one sign for a set period of time like the other planets do. Okay, so he moved into Capricorn. Let me see my notes. Way back in November of 2008. Okay, so he's been in Capricorn for 14 years. He moves into Aquarius on March 23rd. He's there very briefly, just over 2 months, okay? Only until June 10th, and then he retrogrades back into Capricorn, and he will be in Capricorn again through January 20th, 2024 until March 2043. So very nearly 20 years, okay? So Capricorn for 12 years, 16 years, 14 years. Oh my goodness. Pluto will have been in Capricorn for 14 years. He will be in Aquarius for 20 years. 20. It's a really, really long time to be in one sign, right? You understand now why 2023 is such a significant year and why I'm talking about these things in little bite-sized chunks, because it's so much information. Okay, so Aquarius, where Saturn has been, is the sign, as I mentioned, of social progress, innovation, has a very radical nature to it. It wants to break free from the structures that were put into place with Capricorn. While Pluto is in Capricorn, we got to experience a lot of corruption coming to the surface, learning about corruption that had been kind of embedded into various cultures for a significant period of time. Now, when Pluto moves into Aquarius, we're going to see more of, okay, well, what do we do differently now? How do we be empowered, Pluto, in a way that is, Aquarius being an air sign, right? So not how are we going to be empowered through the material realm, but how are we going to be empowered through the intellect? Okay, so Aquarius is the sign of the eagle. It has, Capricorn is the sea goat. So it has the ability to go to the lowest depths and then climb to the highest mountaintops. Okay, which says a lot. This mythical symbol of Capricorn, it's very indicative of Capricorn's ability to self-reflect and then achieve, right? Both of these things. And the achievement, the ability to meet that goal, is often based on its ability to self-reflect, right? On many levels. We could have a 20-minute conversation just about achievement being based on self-reflection, spiritual work, all of those things. But once it's in Aquarius, Aquarius is higher mind. My mom always says that it's the big computer talking to the little computer, right? So the big computer in the sky talking to your brain. So think of where the Capricorn gets to the highest mountain. Aquarius is the eagle that can circle the land And it sees everything. It sees further than even Capricorn can. Very visionary, progressive Aquarian energy. And as Saturn moves into Pisces at the same time that Pluto first has a little stint in Aquarius, and then, you know, will be with Saturn will be in Pisces for a good 1.5 to 2 years, while Pluto is in Aquarius. And I bring this up because I think there's going to be more compassion brought to how we are restructuring our society post-COVID, as we encounter more and more environmental problems, as we become a more globalized community. So that's at the macro level, but micro level in your own life, this really Pluto is going to move into a new house of your horoscope, most likely. Well, it depends on your rising sign in your horoscope, but all the same, this is a big shift of energy. Okay, so we are going to feel it, and we're going to get just a little taste of it for these 2.5 months, the end of March until, what is it, June 10th. And so see, you know, if you're able to track it, like this Pluto in Aquarius is giving us a taste of what 2024 is going to bring when all of these energies are solidified, right? And then we get 20 years of this energy. It's big time. This is why everybody's talking about 2023, 20 years. So 14 years, 14 years in Capricorn, 20 years in Aquarius. Okay, we'll see how it plays out in our personal lives. Now, if you have any questions, please drop them below. Thank you so much for watching. I love you all. Ciao, ciao.